Good morning, everybody. For the people here at the UF-IFAS Center in the auditorium, please take a seat. And please sign up. There is a sign-up sheet. For the guys on the Zoom, good morning, everybody. Thank you for joining us. I would like to thank Alison at the UF-IFAS Center for her help. She's very helpful as usual. This program has been communicated and organized and cooperated with Mike Harrington with AMVAC. So he will be introducing the speaker later on. So thank you, Mike, for your collaboration and with your team. This programs offer 1 CEU for pesticide license renewal and 1 CCA, certified crop advisors. The forms are in the back. So go ahead and get your sheets and fill it out, and I will sign it later on. For the guys on the Zoom, they can send me an email with their license number, and we will issue a CEU form for them. We have 2 speakers from IFAS, from the UF-IFAS Center. We have one, Dr. Fernando Alferez. He is an assistant professor in horticulture sciences. And we have Dr. Tripti Vashisth. She came from the Citrus Research and Education Center in Lake Alfred. Thank you for coming, Tripti. I will leave it up to Mike. He can introduce the first speaker and let you know about the program in details.
Okay, good morning. I appreciate your interest in SWFREC and taking the time out of your busy schedules to come and visit with us today. And then Mongi, thank you again for setting this all up and making it all come together. And I was hoping Dr. Burton would be in here, but he said he would try to. But thanks for him for letting us use the facilities here. Okay, I'm Mike Harrington. I'm your Florida representative, and I have been around in the industry about 45 years and with AMVAC for 22 years. I've seen this product. We've had it for so long, and then in the last couple of years, it's been an explosion for the interest of this product. So the purpose of this meeting is basically to share information. We all want to get more knowledge on how to use SWFREC in Florida. It's been a California product for many years, and as some of the speakers will talk to you about, and how it's translated to Florida. But as we know, Florida is a little different from California. So we'll discuss that, but we want to make it an open forum so that if any of you have experienced this product and have learned a little bit about it, we welcome your input. We think there's a lot to be gained from our experiences in California, what we know about the chemistry, how the product works, but we don't know the application in Florida completely. So, and then you throw in HLB. So now you're changing everything. So we got too many variables, but I'm here to tell you that besides the university speakers, and I want to thank them both for their participation in this, but you need to know that we're committed to this product and we're committed to the industry. We're hoping that with all of us together, whether it's AMVAC, the University of Florida, CRDF, or you growers that are all using this product out there, it sure is going to have to be a team effort. But I think if we share amongst ourselves what we're learning, we'll all benefit from it. At the end of the day, the industry has been brought to its knees, and this is a good tool, really a good tool that can help preserve the future of the industry. So I think the University of Florida speakers have a lot to share. I think they got but again, they're on the cutting edge of a lot of this, and it will be evolving over time. So with that being said, again, Tripti and Fernando, thank you very much for your time in advance. Okay. Besides that, we have some guest speakers, and just I think it's wise to introduce these people from AMVAC, because I want to show you the interest and the level of knowledge that we do have within our company that are working on this product. So first of all, though, I'd like to introduce Mike Askanga. Micah has lived in Florida, but he now reaches across to the Washington State. So, but he's your product manager. He does, I think you're doing some international stuff on all this, all these specialty crops. He's he's a real resource for us, very knowledgeable young man. And I think he's going to be committed to this product and help us in whatever we need financially too. We also have Dr. Wynn Carter, and Wynn, you'll show you. Okay, so Wynn hails from the University of Georgia. He lives in Tifton. He's our extension. Well, he's more of our, I guess, he's an entomologist, first of all. You're not an entomologist? No, I'm sorry. You're weed scientist. We got two weed scientists here. Sorry. But he hails from University of Georgia, and don't hold that against him. But he's going to be our tech support for Florida, and he's really jumped right in on this thing, and I think he's going to be involved quite closely with the evolution of it. We have our Vice President of Research, Development, Technology, International Involvement, Peter Papiglia. Peter, would you? He hails from the state of New York, and he oversees all these projects. He manages 14 other people, so but he's supporting this also. We have Dr. Gary Cunliffe, and Gary's somewhat new with us. He comes from Mississippi State. He lives out in Cleveland, Mississippi, and he will be involved with the research part of this. Probably won't see him as much, but he will be doing behind the scenes work, all the trials that we're doing. And let me just mention that, we're doing our trials. We have CRDF is involved with 6 cooperators, and I'm not sure if any of you are involved in that, but they're doing trial work with us besides the university work. So we've got a lot of things going right now, and we're going to learn a lot. And then we have Mason Bennett back here. He's the Southeastern Regional Manager. So Mason, so appreciate you being here too. All right. If you'll do me a favor and maybe mute your phone so we don't have much interruption on that, I greatly appreciate it. But without further ado, I'm going to ask Tripti if she'll come up and. Oh, Fernando's going to go first. Okay, Dr. Alferez, we met with him about a month ago, and he absolutely enlightened us on auxins and how it affects the physiology of the tree. Now you're wired for sound already, right? Can we wire you again, because we're going to tape your presentation? Okay.
Well, good morning. Thanks for having me. Thanks for this kind invitation. And what was my purpose today is to share some work, some historical work that was done 20 to 30 years ago in Valencia, Spain, which is very similar to California. This was original work from some of my colleagues at that time, and some also collaborators. And then try to understand what's the situation with auxins now here in Florida in a situation of endemic HLV. And the first thing that I want to emphasize is that with every hormone, but also and mainly with auxins, timing and physiological status of the plant and of the fruit are the most important determinants, in this case for synthetic auxin application. And ideally, both timing of application and physiological status, the ideal physiological status should be linked. And that's very important. Some generalities that maybe all of you know already about 2,4-D and some reported uses and effects through the years, both in pre-harvest and also during post-harvest, is all of them are related with fruit quality. Fruit size, better juice content, better fruit retention. And in the case of post-harvest, is really interesting because there is a reborn interest on this because they have seen that it retards calyx abscission. So by doing that, the fruit looks fresher, and for instance, for fresh fruit production is really important. There is a very important interest on this application in countries that use most of the production for fresh. For instance, in South Africa, there is a very, very important interest in this application, and they are trying also to find other analogs of this compound. Now, in the next slides, I'm going to show, as I told you at the beginning, some historical data on 3 or 4 different effects of 2,4-D. And the first one is that 2,4-D may inhibit blooming when it's applied during dormancy in winter. And you can see how control is. Oh, and by the way, the slides, I wanted to keep it that way. The slides are original from the Spanish work, so they are in Spanish, but you can see in the YX, it says intensity of blooming, and then control on 2,4-D. This was done in navel late oranges, and you can see how 2,4-D reduces the intensity of blooming, but there is a time to do this. If you pass that timing, then you have leaves that are damaged by the compound, as you can see in the picture. And this is the difference in the physiological stage of the plant when you can apply safely to reduce blooming. On the left, during dormancy, once that period has passed, it's not advisable to apply this compound because you have that damage that I just showed before. So when the body is differentiating, that timing has passed. Another effect is increase in fruit size. Again, the slide is in Spanish because of the same reason. These are old original slides, but it says it's clear fruit diameter, and then 2,4-D concentration. And you can see how applied at 2 different times when the fruitlets were 25 millimeters or 30 millimeters, we have 2 different effects on the fruit regarding final fruit size. And you can see how fruitlets are bigger or larger at the end if applied when they are small. And with that, they develop a rule of thumb that for mandarins, it is recommended to apply when the diameter of the fruitlet is between 15 and 20 millimeters. And for oranges, when they are a little bit larger, between 25 and 30 millimeters. Again, very important, it is not about the date of application, it is about of the physiological stage of the fruit in this case. Ideally, the physiological stage should be linked to the date of application. So we know, okay, by March 30, we can apply because that's the time that most of the fruit will be this size, but not always is that the case. So the most important determinant here is the physiological stage or the diameter the fruits have at that time. And the final effect that I wanted to share here is abscission reduction, again in navel late. And this was very interesting because the treatment was done very early. Navel late in Valencia, they mature by May, June, they are ready to pick. The treatment was done in October, and you can see the difference. By late May, you have a fruit drop, you have natural fruit drop because of senescence, and we will talk about senescence later in this talk. But you can see that you have 43% of fruit drop. Treating in October with 2,4-D, you can see that the fruit drop was 11%. So it was really early in the season. Now, I'm going to switch gears a little bit here, and we are going to talk now about how endogenous auxins work. And this is a slide that will be very busy at the end, and I have shown a few times in other events, but I think it's important for the work that we are trying to do here. And it deals with what was the situation in Florida when we didn't have HLB. We are talking here about 15, 16 years ago. And we were comparing fruit retention in both Hamlin and Valencia. And you can see how in Hamlin, this is fruit detachment force. That is the force that you need to exert to the fruit to separate the fruit from the plant through the abscission zone. You can see how during maturation, at the latest part of the maturation, when the fruit is changing color from September to January, there is no a decrease in fruit detachment force. This is in Hamlin. This is what happened in Valencia. During the same period of time, in this case is from January to May. And I will walk you through this slide if I can. Okay. Can you see the, okay. So you can see this is from January to May, is again when the fruit starts to change color until the end of the maturation and the senescence. And you can see how at the beginning is constant fruit detachment force. Then what happened in February, late February, early March? This was done in Central Florida, so it was late than here. Here, this happens in February. But you can see that there is new flushing and there is bloom. And we were able to measure a transient increase in endogenous auxin. At that time, we had a decrease in fruit detachment force. That recovered once these leaves fully expanded and this bloom started to grow the fruitlets. This was maintained for several months, and then the new fruitlets reached what we call marble stage, like 2-3 centimeters. There was a new pulse of auxins that was transient, and in the mature fruit, natural senescence started. And at that time, you can see how fruit detachment force decreased a lot, and we started to have a fruit drop. We were able to see that this transient pulse of auxins was inducing an enzyme in the flavido of the mature fruit. This is called PLA2. And this PLA2 is related with fruit senescence and is related with abscission in citrus. It's a parallel pathway to ethylene in citrus. And this was a signal that was the right signal at the right time, because this was mature fruit that needed to drop from the tree to make room to the new fruitlets that were growing. And the nice part of this is that the signal came from the newly set fruitlets, and we will talk about that later. So this was a signal that came from the fruitlets to the mature fruit to induce fruit drop. And all of that was regulated, again, by auxins. Now, what is the situation under HLB? Again, this was 15, 16 years ago. And this is how these trees are wired. Now, we have a situation in which, as usually, we have three main flushes. We have spring flush, we have summer flush, and we have fall flush. And usually in normal conditions, only spring flush is blooming. You have both stages there, the vegetative stage and the reproductive stage. So you have your main bloom there. But now in this situation, because of HLB, because HLB has altered all hormonal balances, and also because response to environmental stresses, we have several of blooms in both summer flush and in fall flush. And these off blooms are again generating aux impulses. And these are the wrong signals at the wrong time, because at this time the fruit should not be abscising and dropping. And the interesting thing is that this is happening now in Hamlin. In Hamlin, remember, we had only the main flush, and that was it. And we were harvesting the fruit by November, December. So there was not this situation of both mature fruit and small fruitlets sharing the tree at the same time as in Valencia. But now, with this situation that we have now, we have off blooms, and we have in Hamlin, October, November, we have both stages in the tree, and somehow the tree is not ready to this new situation. And at the end, what you have is massive pre-harvest fruit drop because of this. And this is what happened in Hamlin. So you may have even 5 or 6 different developmental stages affecting the hormonal interactions within the tree. So if at a stage like this or like this, you have a pulse of auxins, and at the same time you have tree fruit that is maturing, we understand that probably we are getting a fruit drop increased by October or November, and that was not the case before. Again, because we are having the wrong signal at the wrong time. And we can do some things about that. So I like always to show this is like a communication scheme in which you have a channel that is channeling the signals that come from the off blooms or the developing fruit, and that are going to the receiver, the mature fruit. And all of this happens in a context of climatic conditions, disease, and environmental stress. And here we can do 2 things. We can interrupt this message that comes from the off blooms and goes to the mature fruit, or we can change the message. And I will give you a couple of examples of things that we have been doing. To interrupt the message, remember, this is the communication scheme that we have now. We have the off bloom of the fruitlets. They are producing auxins that are transmitted to the mature fruit. They induce this enzyme that I told you before, the PLA2, and then we have mature fruit abscission. We were using 2 compounds that they are not commercially available for growers. and they will not be registered, but this was like a proof of concept. One is a competitive inhibitor of the enzyme of the PLA2, and the other one is an auxin transport inhibitor. So by spraying this compound on the tree, we are able to interrupt that flux of auxins coming from the small fruitlets. And we did another thing, and I will talk about that in a while. So we measured fruit detachment force before the off blooms, and you can see that was about 8 kilos. And this is the fruit detachment force after we have the off bloom and we have fruit set, and you can see how this decreases. Every treatment that I just described was able to retain the fruit or to maintain fruit detachment force. This was telling us that, yes, also here in this situation under HLB, auxins are the transient signal. Now, are the fruitlets the sender? Well, this is very easy to do. We just remove fruitlets from the same branches, and you can see how also the fruit detachment force is maintained. So this was telling us that the fruitlets are the sender of the auxin signal. And this is my last slide. I told you that one thing to do is to interrupt the message. The other one is to change the message. We are doing different treatments, and I will not talk today about that, to try to keep auxins level high. But another thing that happens, and we are getting more and more reports on that, is that with HLB, we have a situation of oxidative stress exacerbated. And oxidative stress can do two things, can produce lipid peroxidation in the membrane by, again, inducing these phospholipase activities, and that results, and we know that, in abscission and fruit drop. But the other thing that oxidative stress does is to degrade auxins, in this case, IAA. And that probably leads to the same, to abscission and fruit drop, because it's really important in the abscission zone to have a high auxins to reduce abscission. As I told you, the auxin flux that we had, it was a pulse, it was transient. And it was transient, and because it was transient, we had later fruit drop because there was activation of PLA2. If auxins are high in the abscission zone, fruit drop doesn't occur because abscission doesn't occur. So we are now what we are trying to assay is different treatments that maintain higher auxin levels in the fruit or in the abscission zone to try to reduce fruit drop. We have been doing some treatments and we get up to 30% of reduction. These are zinc and potassium treatments that I will not extend today. But one of the things that we have seen is that they maintain the auxin levels high, and also they reduce the oxidative stress. So actually they are impacting both pathways here. And with this, I leave the presentation. This is the latest things that we are doing now. And I don't know if we have questions, time for questions now or later. No? Okay.
Would you recommend this treatment if I'm already following your zinc potassium sulfate?
At this time, okay. Yes, sorry. Yeah, the question was if I would recommend the zinc and potassium sulfate to reduce fruit drop. Yeah. At this time, we are not ready to make a recommendation. What we are doing is just sharing in real time what we are seeing. But we are not ready to make a recommendation. Why? Because we were treating for at regular times, and we think that maybe one application is enough, but we need to understand at what time is that application the most efficient, and we don't know that yet. We are doing that now. But we believe anything that maintain oxygen levels high can help. Oxygen levels high for an extended period of time. I believe it can help, but we are far away from making a recommendation.
Are you looking at doing that on some of your tests? You're using the potassium and the zinc?
Yeah, the question is if we are looking into that now. Yes, we are doing that. Actually, I think we have an application next week on this. Yeah.
Fernando, a couple questions. You went over the size of the group for increasing group size. Right, but you didn't mention rate.
Rate.
What? How much oxygen was applied to achieve those results?
Yes. The question is that I was talking about a application of 2,4-D in this case to increase fruit size, but I didn't mention rate. I can go back. I think I can go back, and there were different concentrations, and I'm sorry I didn't mention this. And this was milligrams per liter, and from 0 to 100, and the most, I would say the most effective was 75.
Milligrams per liter throughout the parts per million?
Yes. Yep. Yes. Yes. Yep. 15. Yes. Yes. Yep.
But this is more of a rate flow, right?
Yes.
One of your slides later on does say 15 milligrams
Yes.
per liter.
Yes.
Yes, this one.
Yes. Yeah, they tried a lot of different concentrations.
That's the beginning.
Yes.
For the 75 degree south.
Yes, but I tell you, I haven't done this here, so I don't know. Yes, yes, that's fruit drop. Yes.
How long is the oxygen staying in the plant?
Is there a way to test that, or have you tested that?
The question was, how long was the auxin staying in the plant? Well, the auxins, if we have tested that, no, we didn't. What I can tell you is in the flavido, all hormones have a very fast turnover. In general, they are in the flavido when you apply 3-4 days, no more than that. And you see a decrease in the concentration. That happens also with ABA, GA. They are all like that. They have a really fast turnover.
Okay, Dr. Alferez, thank you.
Thank you.
By the way, there is a chapter in the Florida Production Guide on plant growth regulators, good chapter. So maybe you need to review it. And we have copies outside on the table,
Okay.
so you can get your copy.
Good morning, everybody. So in my today's presentation, I'm going to specifically focus with the 2,4-D and fruit drop in citrus. You may have heard me talking about gibberellic acid, but today's presentation is specifically about auxin, and Fernando's presentation gives me a very good introduction. Just as a general one thing, that auxin and gibberellic acid are the growth promoting hormones. So it's the naturally occurring plant hormone that promotes growth. So anytime if your fruit is growing, it needs auxin, it needs gibberellic acid. Same with the leaf. So they just support the growth. And what we have been learning with HLB is that these hormones are disrupted because it's the biotic stress of the bacteria, psyllid feeding. It just disrupts the whole balance, and these growth promoting hormones are often seen to be at the lower level. Now, someone had asked the question about, can we measure these hormones? Yes, we can measure these hormones, but like Fernando said, these are very transient hormones. Also, they are getting utilized at a very high rate. So sometime if your leaf is actively growing and you may not see a lot of auxin in it because it's utilizing it as it's being produced. So there are some challenges when we are measuring hormones. Nonetheless, it does tell us a lot about what is happening. So hormones are needed by the plant to do its necessary functions, and here 2,4-D and GA are the growth promoting one. Now 2,4-D, that's the full name of 2,4-D. It's basically a synthetic auxin. Auxin will be needed in any process of the plant wherever the growth is happening. So it's really important. Auxin is actually one of the first hormones that was discovered in the plant for the growth. So a lot of work has been done in auxin in different crops. Now, auxin is also involved in fruit growth and development. A growing fruit needs more auxin. And actually, it's interesting, as the fruit is growing and it sends, so seeds are often the seed, even though some of our fruit are seedless, but generally speaking, seeds send the signal to the tree, and the signal is the auxin signal. When it passes through that branch, the branch is actually receiving that signal, which tells the tree, you need to keep this fruit growing. And then the fruit is not responding to ethylene. So auxin plays a very important role. As long as the tree is perceiving, or that branch that is attaching to the fruit is perceiving auxin, the fruit keeps growing and it does not respond to ethylene. Once that auxin starts to go down, the tree starts to respond to ethylene and the fruit abscission happens. This is a very generalized way. I'm saying it's way more complex than this, but auxin will retard senescence process, any aging process, and it will retard abscission. And for that reason, it is being used a lot in the post-harvest studies too, because it improves the peel integrity too. So now I'm going to switch about HLB-associated fruit drop and what we do need to know to make that right application, because like Fernando was saying, the timing and the physiological status when we apply is the key, and no doubt about it. The right time of application is what we need, because again, these hormones affect a lot of different processes. We just need, in this case, to reduce fruit drop. So we need to understand few things about fruit drop. So this is a slide that I've used before. Basically, in this slide, what you're seeing is cumulative fruit drop in Valencia from January to May. Now, since we don't have any healthy trees, all I can do is a comparison between a highly symptomatic tree to a mildly symptomatic tree. So in this case, what we saw, that the severe trees which have a lot of HLB symptoms, they drop more fruit than a mild tree. I mean, it's obvious, it's just a documentation. And most of this increase is happening in February. That's when, so they kind of start at the same level and then it just skyrockets. So more symptoms mean more drop. Also, a severe tree would have less canopy. So another way to look at it is, if you have a good canopy, then you will have less fruit drop. Now, let's talk about the hormone imbalance. And again, we don't have healthy trees. So in this case, what I did was we compared sugar bell LB8-9, which is a mandarin, and we know sugar bell doesn't drop much fruit. And we compared it to the Hamlin, and we just wanted to know what is happening. And what we saw that in Hamlin, which is dropping more fruit or which drops more fruit, auxin and GA was downregulated. So these hormones were being downregulated, and hence there was more drop happening. Overall, this is what we came up with. We did see that sugar bell had a better oxidative stress mitigation strategies. Hamlin was going through more oxidative stress. And we saw these all hormones, auxin and GA, which are the promoting ones, were down in Hamlin. Ethylene, abscisic acid, which is abscisic acid is another important hormone. It's related to drought stress. Ethylene and ABA and these other hormones were upregulated, which have been shown historically that could be happening during time of abscission. Now, what we came up with is that HLB is causing downregulation or imbalance of these hormones, which could be contributing to more oxidative stress. Now, we keep talking about oxidative stress in the last few months. Oxidative stress happens in a lot of different things. HLB is also one of the reasons that can cause oxidative stress, but soil pH, salinity, drought stress, all these things cause oxidative stress. So it's just another stress on top of everything else the plant is going through. Even a hormone imbalance will cause oxidative stress. With all of this going on, we see more abscission happening, and that's why we propose that Hamlin drops more fruit. So the key, again, these promoting hormones were low. Now, this is a slightly complicated slide, but the main thing that I do want to show you that here we were trying to look at the abscission signal. We wanted to know when is that abscission signal happening, when that signal that the fruit is about to drop is happening. So we had Hamlin in this case, and we looked at the fruit in October, right before the fruit drop is about to accelerate. And we looked at them in November. These hormones are related to ethylene biosynthesis. And what we saw that in October, we see upregulation of ethylene. So more ethylene is being produced in October, not so much in November. It's not statistically significant. And we were looking in mild trees and severe trees. Orange bar means the fruit that was loose. Blue bar is the fruit that was hanging on tightly. So what we are seeing, loose fruit is showing more ethylene signals in October, not in November. And same with abscisic acid. Abscisic acid is a drought stress related hormone. We are seeing more biosynthesis happening in October, not much in November. So the way ABA and ethylene works is actually ABA can induce more production of ethylene. Also, if your tree is going through drought stress, it will have more ABA biosynthesis, which will stop the growth. And we know HLB affected trees have small root masses. So it's very likely that they will go through more drought stress. So the bottom line here from this study, what we found is that the fruit that is about to drop, basically the signal for that drop has already happened in October for the fruit that you will be seeing dropping in next few months. Now going back to this slide again, now I'm showing you the Hamlin slide. Previous one was a Valencia slide. And see, this is where in October, you start seeing this bifurcation happening, more drop. The drop is increasing. And that's when the fruit drop signal is also happening. So the signal precedes when the actual physical drop is about to happen, which means that if we want to reduce the drop, we need to do something this or even before this time. So October or before October is the time. In case of Hamlin, October is already late because the signals have already happened. So we just need to start sooner. Now, another interesting characteristic that we saw with the fruit that drops is that the fruit that drops, now I have again my mild trees, moderate trees, severe trees. A means the fruit that retained on the tree until December or January, whenever the fruit was harvested, and D means the fruit that actually dropped. no matter what the tree symptom is, mild or severe, the drop fruit are always smaller in size. So the fruit that drops is of small size compared to the fruit that stays on the tree. Fernando did talk about fruit size. And one of the things is that anything that helps with the fruit size is going to help with fruit drop reduction too. So we just need to do things that can help the fruit in growing better and just stay on the tree. So what does this all mean? The HLB associated drop is related to reduction in levels of auxin and gibberellic acid or gibberellins. The signal for fruit drop starts early in the season. Small fruit are more likely to drop. The signal for fruit drop is linked to fruit development. That's what I'm trying to say, that the fruit that doesn't grow is the one that drops. Treatment that can improve fruit size are likely to help with fruit drop reduction. So hormonal treatments applied early in the season have potential for reducing drop because we want to get before the signal for the drop happens. And also repeated hormonal application is needed. And the reason I keep saying about repeated application in all of my PGR work is because we know we have the bloom that pretty much expand, like it's almost 6 weeks, 8 weeks long bloom. So every fruit set is happening at a different time. We need to catch every growing fruit at different physiological stage. Also, all these stresses, if ABA is the reason that the fruit drop is happening, which means drought stress is the reason, the tree is going through it continuously. So we need to have these repeated application to keep the tree growing. We do need to find the best times though, because when we can get most bang for our buck. So that's the economics decision I think we need to make, and we are working on that. But nonetheless, I think repeated applications are needed. So now I'll talk about the trial that I started last year. It's a 2,4-D and gibberellic acid trial. We worked on Valencia on Swingle. The trees were about 15 years old, and we had 4 treatments: untreated control, gibberellic acid, 2,4-D, and GA plus 2,4-D at these rates. I applied at 3 time points. So there was repeated application. 3 applications is what I made, and it was based on what I have learned on fruit drop. Now, I will say right here, 3 applications of citrus fix is not on the label. Citrus fix says 1 application, but the research always has to proceed. So we are working on if this works. We sprayed 1 gallon per tree, and we did a hand sprayer, used a hand sprayer because we have a randomized experiment, 8 replicates, and we left 2 buffer trees on the sides. So this is what the fruit drop data looks like. Control and GA plus 2,4-D and 2,4-D. So we do see reduction with the use of combination of GA and 2,4-D, and actually 2,4-D itself, it's AB, so it's not statistically significant, but it's 38 versus 24. So we are seeing that 2,4-D has potential to reduce the drop. Sorry. When we looked at this yield, even though numerically the numbers look good, but there is no statistical difference between untreated control and the GA plus 2,4-D or 2,4-D itself. It's 50 pounds more per tree basis, but it's not statistically significant. And that is because we know HLB trees have so much variation and we can't do much about it. Now, we did see improvement with the fruit size too. So this application here improved the fruit size as well, a significant improvement. And there was no difference in the bricks to acid ratio. And actually, I was happy about it because usually when you have a bigger fruit, the sugars might be more diluted, but we are not seeing any detrimental effects. So being close to control is, I think, a good thing in my opinion. So GA plus 2,4-D application seems promising, but the timing is the key. We need to apply it at the right time to have that maximum benefit. And I think because we were able to impact the fruit size, we were seeing differences in the fruit drop. Now, there's another new trial that Dr. Alferez and I are conducting right now. This trial is funded by CRDF. This is just, it has been only a few months since this is ongoing, but I just want to tell you what we are doing here. So we are evaluating summer application of 2,4-D and GA on reducing fruit drop and improving fruit growth. So we are looking into if we apply 2,4-D and GA separately and in combination earlier in the season, can we improve the fruit size to a level that we will have less fruit drop? So we are applying GA and 2,4-D every 45 days, starting after the June drop actually happens, and we'll keep applying it. Again, that would not be the label used, but we are looking into that anyways, because I think there's potential of it helping us. So this experiment was just started. We plan to continue it for 3 years. So this is one of the latest work that I'm doing with auxin and gibberellic acid together. With that, I believe that is my last slide. So thank you for my lab, CRDF, funding agencies, and Peace River Packing, who has been our collaborator all this time. So we always use induce, but I've not played with different surfactants. We have used induce and we have seen its, we like its performance. So induce, I believe any organosilicone would be a good one, but surfactants are needed. Always have it with your PGRs. That just helps in the absorption. Yes.
How many ounces of GA per acre?
So we are applying gibberellic acid is 10 fluid ounce per acre, and citrus fix is being applied at 1.2 fluid ounce per acre. Yeah. So it's the label rate for citrus fix, I believe, is 3.3 fluid ounce per acre. We are not using the full rate. We are using a lower dose just because we believe these repeated frequent application might be as potent as a full strength or maybe better. So we are using a lower rate than the label. Yes, Peter. So there are, yes. So we quantify HLB infection. One of the most common way is to measure the bacterial titer by qPCR. It's a good method, but it's highly variable. Yep. So we in my lab have kind of stopped doing that. Instead, what we do pay attention is the canopy density. We know canopy of a tree is the best indicator of the tree health, regardless what the PCR says. So we quantify how well the trees are growing over time.
Is there your data suggesting balance on oxygen that performs better than just either one alone?
Yes, I think so. Because this is now, I don't know if you have paid attention to my gibberellic acid work, but the gibberellic acid work, we did it over time. And what we saw is that gibberellic acid kind of in that work was helping in building a tree better. So it just took a long time to build a better foundation. Here in a short term, in just one season, we started in October, and by that harvest, we could see a difference in the fruit size. So I think the combination is working better in a short term, and long term, we need to evaluate which would be better, or maybe the combination. Now, I know I've been told that in some of the countries like Brazil and South Africa and India, it's a common practice to have GA and auxin together, a little bit, a light dose throughout the season, because both are needed for growth. It's not that one is more important than other. I think both are important. Sorry, don't have a clear answer, but I think the combination works better.
But there's a balance.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Could be maybe one of the AMVAC specialists can correct me, but the Cunliffe label allows for multiple applications. Like you're putting out oil, you can put in this much oil, you can put in this much Cunliffe. So it is allowed the last label.
I'm looking at Mike and Wen. Can you, so I think they will talk about. Yeah, I just paid attention to the fruit drop one, which was 3.3 fluid ounce from November through December. But yeah. All right. Thank you.
Just before we wrap it up, just want to check with anyone on Zoom and see if they have any questions for us. Okay, if no one has any questions, then we can go ahead and wrap it up.
in that market that is regulated by county commissioners, there was a lot of discrepancy around how many times can I apply Citrus Fix versus in a crop stage versus full season. So the Department of Pesticide Regulation, in conjunction with several of the large growers in that market, and AMVAC and the CCQC came together and said, all right, let's try to clean this up. This label is complex. There was a lot of misunderstanding. So some of the changes that you see in 2020, when the new federal label was posted, is direct correlation from those conversations, what the folks in that market were asking for. The 24C in Florida, however, which allows for the application of Citrus Fix, as you all know, from November 1st to December 31st for pre-harvest fruit drop other than navels, and also navel applications in mid-August and mid-September. We wanted to keep that in place because that historically is where applications had taken place. So as my understanding, as the University of Florida, IFAS, the CCDF, all those entities are looking at applications earlier in the year. I think several folks in this room actually have used that. The new Section 3 label allows for more flexibility based off of crop sizing rather than timing of the year. And so those changes have gone into place. The data, so at that time, so 2 years ago, AMVAC, as long as I think several folks in Florida Citrus and Mike and the team said, hey, we need data to support any additional language that we would add to our federal label. And so that's what my colleague, Dr. Carter, will review next, is the data that we've been working on to try to bring new language to Section 3. So from a regulatory standpoint, FDACs as well as the citrus industry in Florida have been very supportive. It takes time. And so our objective really is to better understand how this tool is being utilized, how we can make sure that it's being applied to the, safely to the correct varieties at the right timing, so that number one, it's beneficial and it has value. And number two, we can take that data and take that to the EPA as well as FDACs and say, hey, here's the new language we'd like to put on the Section 3 label, which would then alleviate the need for the state 24C. And so that's really the longer term plan. Again, here's the 24C, and that's what's coming down the pipeline next. That's the game plan. I also manage product availability, supply as well. So I don't know, Mike, if there's going to be a question and answer, we want to save that for after, or if we want to take opportunity now. I know we're waiting on lunch, so if there's any questions, I'm more than happy to answer. But that's really an overview. It's a little bit complex. This label is it's a long label. It wasn't very straightforward. So the company has been working to clear it up. And again, I just wanted to provide that overview. If there's any questions or comments. Okay. I will make a brief comment in terms of product availability. So AMVAC's goal really is to ensure that the right product's in the right place at the right time. Do we get it perfect every time? Absolutely not. I work across the variety of crops and specialty and high value across the U.S. And the last couple of years have been a big challenge. There's no surprise. So some of what we have faced and what we are going to aim to get better at is positioning product like CitrusFix, for example, in distribution centers that are more localized to this market. So for example, this particular product is produced in California. So there are 6 North American manufacturing sites with AMVAC. This particular one, both the technical product and the formulated product happen on the West Coast. And so for us, one big lesson this year, as the use timing of this particular product changes, is to have product available on the East Coast so that we can more quickly get product in your hands when needed. And so we rely and trust our distribution partners. That's just want to make just kind of a brief comment on product availability.
Mike,
yes, sir.
Claim paperwork you had to fill out with the honor, I guess, to get the product.
Yes, sir. Yeah. So when it comes to the change in label, so when the federal government stamped the new Section 3 label in 2020, that changed the ability for applications that had been, 30 years, that 24C had been guidelines. When the Section 3 allowed folks to apply that based off of crop timing, instead of dates, that put in a place, that put us into a spot, kind of a spot where we needed to make sure that folks that were utilizing the product and applying the product, that they, number one, had an understanding that we are still generating data for that use, so that it's a number one, that it's a new use. And the second piece of that is to mitigate the risks of application in timings of the year that you know, might be susceptible to volatilization or inversions of things of that nature.
Any thought on the AMVAC part to put out a different formulation of the material?
For example, here in Immokalee, you probably don't want to put out a ester 2,4-D with tomatoes next door to you in the month of December, whereas a choline or an amine might be more applicable.
Yes, sir. No, that's a great question. So I think when it comes to, and I probably will rely on the folks with PhDs to better answer this question. To your point, so the question was, has AMVAC looked at alternative formulations of 2,4-D other than the isopropyl ester formulation because of its tendency to, because of its possibility of volatilizing and affecting neighboring crops or any other, you know, any offsite situation. And I think the first thing was that, yeah, I mean, we're very cognizant and would want the users of this product to understand and make sure that they're very, very clear on those risks for this particular formulation. Now, I believe in this. I don't want to talk outside of my expertise here. So again, I think my next colleague will probably speak to this point and better answer your question. I believe that there is the ester formulation is more readily available, taken up by the leaf. So I think that the formulation itself can have an effect on the use of the PGR, but that we're getting way above my pay grade. So I'll let Dr. Carter to talk on that one. If there's no other questions, I'll pass it over to Wynn, and appreciate everybody's time.
Back up. All right. First off, thank you all for being here. Thank you for the willingness to come today and have us and the University of Florida be able to discuss this viable tool that we hope we can bring forth and work with you on trying to figure out how best to use it. I'll reintroduce myself. I'm Wynn Carter. I cover technical service for the Southern U.S. for AMVAC. I've been with the company for 5 years and have recently picked up Florida in my duties as well. It always happens that whenever I'm down here, Mike precedes my introduction with the fact that I am from Georgia to go ahead and set the stage for y'all to dislike me. But I intentionally did wear a blue shirt today so as to try to get out of here as safe as possible, even though I am a Bulldog, and make it back to my hometown in Tifton. I do want to make a point. Mike made the introductions, but I do want y'all to also know that my colleagues, Dr. Peter Papiglia is here. He is the Vice President of Product Development for AMVAC. So a lot of these questions, if y'all start throwing them at me, I'm going to duck behind this and throw them to him since he is my boss. We also have Gary Cunliffe. So Gary is the product development manager for Florida and other parts of the Mid-South. So Gary does more work with private researchers and the University of Florida. I work with the university and then end users such as growers, retailers, consultants, those type of people. So a little more context as to what we do. A little more housekeeping. Another thing to get myself in your good graces, we have some AMVAC cups in the back. Please feel free to take one. That was actually Micah's doings, but I'll take credit for it since he did not. Also, we have some sign-in sheets for the CEUs. I'm sure you saw those, but want to keep those, let y'all know to do that before we get to lunch. And please stay for lunch after this. So in order to jump into this now, what I plan to do is to show you some data that AMVAC generated in 2020 and 2021. This data was generated using the use patterns on that section 24C. So what you've heard by the two people, the two doctors, Dr. Tripti and Dr. Alferez that spoke before me, is we might be migrating to different types of applications, different rates, different timings. So I do want you to know that as I go through this data, that was our initial investigation into these rates and how these rates would work in Florida citrus groves that are infected with HLB. Totally different environment than when this label was written in 1989. So it's 33 years old. We've had a lot of changes in the industry since then. So AMVAC is fully aware that in cooperations with the University of Florida and CRDF and growers, that it might be time to update the Section 3 label and change that to better fit your needs. So I'm going to go into this data. I do want you to realize that it is maybe not as compelling as some of the stuff that you saw from Dr. Tripti that had different types of application timings. And that's why we need your help, the University of Florida's help, and CRDF's help in order to make sure we have that label written to suit the best possible, to suit your needs in the best possible way and to be the most effective that it can be. So what I want to show you here is some of the trials that we did put out in 2020. So you'll see treatments, there's citrus fix, we had rate, and we had application timing. Protocol number is just an internal number that we use, so no real need to look at that there. These are the people that completed those trials. So we have CRO, that's just the contract research organization that did them. We have the location, you see when they're initiated and completed, and then the different varieties that were used between Hamlins and Valencias. We measured tree vigor, fruit drop, and yield. What I'm going to show you today is fruit drop and yield. So probably the two most important things there. As we go into this, I did mention the treatments are one application. What you'll see, I think I've got that on a further one, but I'll lay that out in just a little bit. So we did do two different applications. We did an early that would not fall in line with our label, since our label does currently read November 1st to December 31st. We did do an application earlier in the year. And then we also did a label application. However, you do see one that says 10/12 under label application. They got it out there a little early because the application by the label now, November 1st to December 31st. So red right there indicates dates that we did do fruit drop before the application actually went out. That was just to give us a baseline for our untreated control. Black indicates data that was collected after the applications were made. You'll be able to see that more easily when I get to the graphs. So first graph here that we've got, this was in Valencia, 10-year-old trees. You'll see drop fruit per 10 trees on the Y-axis. On the X-axis, you see the different dates. The bars that are full, so let's see early. So the application, you see where it was made on 8/27, and then from every count thereafter means we had already made the application. You see the full bar. Blue bar was the label application. You see the different dots there, and then you see over here where the label application was made, then you see the bar filled in. If the bar is not filled in, it means the application wasn't made yet. Just to kind of, as we walk through the rest of these slides, I'm only going to kind of go into detail on this one so you can get an idea on it. So essentially what this shows though is with the untreated control is the black dots going across there. It does show in a sense on the last date or data date that we collected, it does show that the label has less fruit drop. However, if you want to really dive into it, you can see that throughout the life of this trial, there was less fruit drop in those trees than there were in the trees that received nothing. So do want to provide context to that data. Don't want to make you think that I'm trying to tell you that it worked right here and that's the end all be all. But while there are less, there's other factors into play there on that slide. So moving on, much the same. We have drop fruit per 3 trees on this one on the Y-axis. We have our dates that we applied here or the rating dates on the X-axis, and then you'll see when the early application went out, and then you'll see when the label application went out. So once again, there were some changes. Perfect. That way I can kind of step back a little bit here. I'll keep rolling. At the end, you do see here, not much difference in how many drop fruit per 3 trees we actually observed. So I'm going to keep moving on. Somebody have a question? Sorry. All right, perfect. So I'll keep going here. What I'm going to show this data, but the main point that I'm wanting to make here with this data is there's a lot of variability that goes into trying to figure out how this works. We've already heard there's more to it than just a date range for timing. There's more to it than just applying potentially one application. It might take more applications than just one in order for us to get the effect that we need to have on these trees. We also know that environmental factors come into play. We know that the citrus greening infected trees also respond differently to 2,4-D applications. So while this data is not compelling, this was our initial stab at it at AMVAC to try to determine where we stood with the label that we had currently.
I think it'd be a lot better if you did cumulative fruit drop as you went through, because if you back up to the other slide, you know, it's showing that, oh, there's no difference. But look at on the untreated control, all the piece count that you have. I mean,
So that
you know, your drop fruit never goes down.
Right,
It's
right.
accumulation.
Yeah,
I'm just saying
yeah.
visually and
To show it in a different manner.
Scale, it would be more appropriate to show cumulative.
Cumulative. So we would take all the different rating dates and then potentially add those up as we go across, because you still might end up, yeah, because if you're dropping it, it's a good point. That we probably should go back and rework that and look at it to see if that makes any difference. What I want to jump out to, so much of these slides are the same thing. So could rework that data and take a look at it to see how that plays into it. We do have, I want to jump to this. So this is yield. So this is another way that we tried to quantify this to see if there were any differences there. So same trials, all now on the x-axis. You'll see the different trials here. And then you'll see the overall. So that's averaged over all the trials. You got the untreated control in black, the early application in orange, and then the label application in blue. So you can see some differences. There's some trends in some of these trials where you did get a higher yield with the label application than you did compared to the untreated control. Now, just the same, I'm not going to disregard the fact that there's others where the label application actually was lower than the untreated control. So what I'm demonstrating here, I'm trying to show, is the variability that does occur when you're applying this product in citrus groves that are infected with HLB. And what we need to continue to try to find out with University of Florida and the CRDF is how the best way to apply this product is. We think, based on what we've heard today, based on what this demonstrates, is there are better ways to do this than what was done in this trial, these two trials in 2020 and 2021. So one thing that I'd like to ask of you, you don't have to, we can discuss it over lunch, but we do want to hear of ways that you are using the product. If you have experience with it, if it's something that you are currently doing in your production practice, if it's something your neighbor is doing and you know about it, we'd love to hear it. We're not here to condemn or judge. We're open to it. We want to make these changes to the label to help fit your needs, to help make this product be an effective tool in the toolbox. So please, at any time now, at lunch, whenever, if you have suggestions to us, such as a data suggestion, that was great. I really appreciate you trying to get us going towards the right direction on how to look at this from a data standpoint. We also would love that input, guidance on how to continue to do these trials. We're actually working, Tripti put up the trials that she's doing with the CRDF. We are working with the CRDF in that same capacity to try to put forth as many trials and look at many different possibilities or combinations of this product as we can in order to help this industry. We know that it's dire the right word. I know that it's in dire conditions, and we're trying to do as much as we can as a company to help support that. Yeah, please.
I think it's a two-part question.
Sure.
The 3.2 ounces per acre per year, that AMVAC made that rate in 1989.
Correct. 33 years ago.
Pre-green.
Correct. That was what I was, yep.
So with all we've seen out of IFAS, and all we've seen, is it fair to make an assumption that this rate would be double that or triple that with a greening infected tree?
So I will defer to people that have far more knowledge on auxins and the interaction in the plant. As far as if they want to provide input on that, I think it's fair to say that we need to make some changes is what I'll concede. But as far as rates,
I would be very cautious in putting out more, because more is not always good. We have to put it at the right time. Maybe less might be good at the right time. But I would be very cautious doubling or increasing, then.
All hypotheticals here.
Oh, that scares me.
So one of the issues is if we go above the total rate on the label now, it will take years to get that changed. So we're trying to understand if there's a way of operating within the current maximum, maybe a different distribution of rates and timings, but staying within the annual maximum may allow us to make a change quickly if we find the right pattern.
Otherwise, we have that
going
residue
above-
intolerances.
Going above that rate requires a whole set of studies by the EPA that gets into the millions of dollars. So that's why we're trying to work within the label to see if there's a way of optimizing that, the response within that maximum amount of product per year.
In the second part, in my area, there's a lot more watermelon farms coming around. And going back to that gentleman's question, you know, I got, I'm not, you know, with auctions, you know, I don't know how these auctions work. I think you gave me that sheet in Arcadia, but you know, is there another, y'all have another product that's not from a legal standpoint, you know, safer to use with these other crops, because we're going into this fall and there's going to be a lot of vegetable growers around here everywhere.
So we've had discussions as recently as this morning, trying again to figure out if there's another tool in AMVAC's toolbox that we could have to help. And we do have a product that's NAA, and it's here. The name of that one is now slipping. So, fruit tone. Is it? Yeah. So it's naphthalene acetic acid. So
Naphthalene acetic acid is
yeah,
another synthetic auxin that other farmers use in other crops. It promotes thinning at one time of the year, and it promotes fruit sticking to the tree at another time of the year, right? So that's another auxin that.
And it's. I don't know if it has.
There is a citrus label. In California, yeah.
So
we have to look at that, but.
And so that it's mentioned in the book. I know in the PGR section of the citrus production guide, it is brought up there, but it was more focused on the fruit
So just to
aspect of it, not the retention.
Just to come full circle. So the question on formulation is an excellent question. But before we can change formulations, we want to find the use pattern that's the most consistent. Because once we change a formulation, we have to go back and retest the efficacy to make sure it works the same as
It's going to
we
take
want,
some time,
right?
yeah.
So there's a couple of different options. As Wynn indicated, we've started some field work. We want to talk to our colleagues here in Florida, our research colleagues in Florida, to see if there's a way we can approach this from a more efficient angle and work together.
So
AMVAC crop, I mean, I think one of the main concern is that we have these vegetable farms around us. Is there studies from anywhere else other than Florida? I mean, it does, where you know that this much distance is a safe distance for the volatilization to be effective.
So we're using much lower rates for this use than they are in the weed control world, where you hear all the negative information about volatilization and off-site drift. But we've also learned, I think, that, you know, it's difficult to predict sometimes off-site movement. We feel like we're in a good space with the rates and the timing and the crop and the situation in Florida.
So that.
But we're watching carefully and closely.
Have there been any reported instances at the 3.2 use rate?
Not that I'm aware of. Micah, you would know better than I, right? Nothing.
So
reported.
there's been a ton of work on this done with the herbicide rates in crop. So in cotton, in University of Georgia, Stanley Culpepper, who was one of my advisors in college, he's the fruit and vegetable specialist there as well. So he's tried to do rate titrations and break it out through, but it all started with a court rate. And so he's done distance studies, he's done wind studies, so we're starting off at 10% or 1/10 of what was done in those. So it becomes difficult to quantify, because are you talking about a physical drift? Are you talking about volatilization? Are you talking about an inversion? There's all these different ways that product could potentially move, and each one of them's moving a different percentage of the product. So it's very difficult to try to say, hey, if you have this occur, here's how far you've got to be away from it. I mean, I think the one recommendation that we could make is, let's try to be cognizant of inversions that happen either early in the morning or late in the afternoon. Try to be aware of wind drift. Let's try to prevent any physical drift from occurring. And then you'll be in a much better, if you can control those two variables, then you're in a much better start at the beginning than you would be if you were just, going out there and applying without thinking of that instance or that occurrence happening. So. Did we?
Let me comment. In 22 years I've been here, we've never had a reported drift issue with the product. Although that being said, the volume is expanded tremendously over the last few years. So, just haven't ever had that issue.
And one thing, please, if you have other people like growers, or if any of you are using it in a different manner, we would love to hear it. We're not, trying to condemn or say that was wrong, because we're open to try to figure out how to best do this thing. So if there's any, because we've heard anecdotal evidence outside of this room of different rates much like this being successful at this application timing. We've heard multiple rates at different times being successful and producing the desired effect. So we're still trying to figure it out and trying to glean all that information and figure out what changes we need to make. So please, if you don't feel like speaking up now, maybe we can do it over a taco or whatever we're about to have for lunch. So we're open to hearing any of that.
The gallons of water per acre. Obviously, we want to go as little as possible to try to cover more ground. Can we do 50 gallons per acre? Can we do 6?
So in my opinion, a good coverage is what you need on the leaves and the fruit. I have been testing mostly 1 gallon, 1.5, your tree size. I would be more comfortable 125 to 150 gallon. That's what you per acre, total spray volume. I know we want to go as little as possible, but you want fruit to get that coverage.
Because some of the data you saw earlier was in concentration, which means water volume is a key factor.
Yes.
So that's another big variable that we have to understand.
So you would recommend, or 1 gallon per tree?
So
of water,
150 gallons per acre.
right?
Yeah. Now, depending on your speed sprayer, 125, I've seen people getting by with it. It depends on the tree size. Now, if you have 25-year-old big trees, which are 16 feet high, probably you want to use 150 or even a little bit more.
Right.
Coverage is what we are going for. Yeah. And end of this, I know it's all economics, so whatever works best.
And if you look at our label, it's drastically different than even that number, because equipment has changed over the past 33 years. So that is another update that we want to try to make sure when we change it, we get that. So I mean, that's ongoing work that we might look at lower.
So one thing, because I've been looking into early application, and in my trials, I've not seen any issues on the tree. But does AMVAC know of like getting anything? I mean, I believe we have been applying since July or October, November, December, which is out of label use. But we don't see any phytotox response on the tree. Does AMVAC know anything about it?
We haven't seen any phytotoxicity either. But again, it depends a little bit on concentration and time of year.
Yeah.
And what else is in the tank?
So we have done numerous trials, and I've worked with growers that have been doing their own trials. And the only report that I get, like if late summer flush, young expanding leaves, you hit it with 2,4-D, you may get a distorted leaf. Nothing severe, but it can cause distortion of the leaf, but no permanent damage to the tree. Okay.
One thing I think I have not done, my work is pretty much with the sweet oranges. But have you seen my grapefruit? I've heard grapefruit being more sensitive to 2,4-D and pomelos. Have you heard it from anybody?
I've heard that, but I do not work with them, and but I have heard that.
So I think one thing that I would like growers to know is that if you have grapefruit or pomelos, then maybe you want to start with a small test block rather than going on full acreages. Also, a lot of the new rootstocks have grapefruit in their genetics. So that's just one more thing to keep in mind. But I think sweet oranges are we know sweet oranges are more resilient than grapefruit.
Any more hard-hitting questions that I can deflect? All right, try to be. Lunch? Yeah, I'm good.
And we'll be around. Feel free to come up to us and challenge.
Yeah, or whisper into our ear something that might have been done that was different than what we talked about, and we'll make sure to try to figure out the best way we can do it. Thank you all
very much. Great. For the group on Zoom, if you are interested about CEUs, email me your certification number and I will take care of it. Thank you.